Hello everyone, my name is Halligan and I'd like to welcome you to today's final presentation on our Food for Thought online course. Well done for reaching this stage. Thank you to all of you who signed up and who have joined us on this 6-week course, looking at some of the issues and challenges that we're facing as we seek to produce enough food to feed the world's population in years to come. And don't forget that we'll be planting a tree in one of our program countries in Africa for each of you who completes this course. So a really big thank you for joining us through this learning journey. And again, well done. We've had a fantastic response with participants joining us from Kenya, Zambia, Uganda, Malawi, and from the United Kingdom, Ireland, from France, from Hong Kong, and from the United States. I hope you've enjoyed. Following today's session, we'll be sharing a completion survey for you to assess the course, and we'd really appreciate the valuable feedback that you could offer. This is a pilot learning and engagement event that we've devised within Self-Help Africa, and your responses will help us to adapt and refine the content for the future. So please let us know what worked, what you think maybe we could have done differently, or topics that you'd like us to cover in the future. I'm really grateful to my colleagues from our development education team in Ireland and from my programs colleagues from Kenya, Uganda, and Malawi, who've presented content during the course. In this session, I'll recap some of the topics and issues that we discussed with each of our speakers, and I'll share with you a few other resources and ideas. Having food to eat is the most fundamental element in human survival. And if you can't eat, you can't live. It's that simple. As Edward Melicky outlined last week, we all need to eat 3 times a day, every day. With Food for Thought, we've tried to raise some of the issues that affect our ability to produce enough food. We've discussed why there is food inequality. Why do some people have too much and others too little? And do we have access to the right kinds of food? And do women have the same access to food as men do? With Food for Thought, we've tried to raise some of the issues that affect our ability to produce enough food, such as why is there food inequality? Why do some have too much and others too little? Do we have access to the right food? Do women have the same access as food as men do? What are organizations like ours, Self-Help Africa, doing to address the challenges of feeding people in regions of the world where poverty and hunger are commonplace? What role do institutions like the Irish government play? And what function do the Sustainable Development Goals or the global goals play in efforts to ensure that people around the world have access to good and nutritious food? With the world's population expected to grow by almost 2 billion people in the next 30 years, it's vital that we find the answers to how we will feed the world, not just now, but in the decades to come. We do this also at a time when changing climate and the pressure this puts on resources like land, water, people, and energy makes the challenge even more significant. In week 3, we looked at global food systems, and Aaron Towers presented to you what we mean by the term, and also some of the challenges facing global food systems, which you can see listed here. And they include things like environmental pressures on the land, as well as the exploitation of laborers who are providing the food to us in their work. We also looked at how and why we need to transform our global food systems in the years to come, and how the production of food will need to be doubled within the next 30 years. In addition to the challenges that we've already discussed, the coronavirus pandemic has further impacted on food security. It's affected people's access and the availability of food, and it's disrupted the progress that's been made in development work prior to the pandemic. In the second week of this course, Hugh Bergen spoke to you about the Sustainable Development Goals, or the global goals. These are a collection of 17 interlinked goals designed to be a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. The SDGs were set up in 2015 by the United Nations General Assembly. They're intended to be achieved by the year 2030. They follow on from the 7 Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs. These functioned as a similar roadmap in the years following the year 2000. Alongside the SDGs, there are a defined list of 169 targets that the UN hope to achieve in delivering on the 17 global goals. The first 2 goals shown here, no poverty and zero hunger, are of particular relevance to global food systems. The disruption to efforts to eradicate malnutrition is especially worrisome. Malnutrition in early life can have lasting effects on people's health and productivity. Urgent action is needed to ensure access to affordable, healthy diets for everyone. Producing food puts huge pressure on the environment. Food production is responsible for approximately 37% of global greenhouse gases. As well as this, producing food threatens wildlife habitats and biodiversity. If farming and food production is not practiced sustainably, it can lead to the degradation of land by removing vital nutrients and consequent desertification. In week 3, we spoke about the importance of soil and how all of the world's food was grown on what effectively is a tiny sliver of earth that we call topsoil. And you'll remember from Aaron's presentation that he used an app to demonstrate this. The video that we're about to share is going to explain this in a bit more detail.
Soil. It's one of the most underrated and little understood wonders on our fragile planet. Here's why. Far from being lifeless dirt, it's estimated that in a single gram of soil, there could be as many as 50,000 species of microscopic organisms, or microorganisms. And in 1 teaspoon of soil, there are more microorganisms than there are people on the earth. But much of what lies beneath in this hidden and deep universe is still alien to us. Despite being literally under our feet, humans have so far only identified a tiny fraction of the extraordinary life teeming underground. But these animals and microorganisms provide an invaluable role. Millions of years of evolutionary competition have led the microorganisms to produce antibiotic compounds to fight their neighbours. And these compounds form the basis of many of the antibiotics used by us humans. We literally make medicine from our soil. No one knows how many new treatments could be lying under our feet, waiting to be discovered. One of the most special creatures living in soil is the earthworm. Darwin was fascinated by them and said,
"It may be doubted if there are any other animals which have played such an important part in the history of the world,"
due to their importance in making and sustaining soil. Earthworms journey down and around, creating breathing holes like lungs in the soil. This creates space for plant roots to grow and keep soil alive. Under the soil, there are also vast and intricate webs of fungal threads. Plants and fungi need each other to thrive, and so they do a deal. Fungi can't capture carbon dioxide to grow like plants can, but they're better than plants at mining the soil for nutrients, so they trade. Plants give fungi carbon to grow, and fungi give plants nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus. It's a mutually beneficial relationship, and just one example of the interconnected ecosystem we're all part of. Plant matter decays and provides food for microbes. They provide food for worms. Worms are food for birds, and so on. Soil provides us humans with almost everything we eat. But it's not just about what soils can do for us. It's important we value, appreciate, and crucially protect soil for a whole load of other reasons too. Think about this for a moment. It takes more than 100 years to build just 5 millimeters, half a centimetre of soil, but just moments to destroy through chemical contamination, urbanisation, landslides, erosion, and more. Some soil is really ancient, dating back millions and millions of years. The oldest soil on Earth is thought to be in South Africa and dates back 3 billion years. In the UK, our soil is around 15,000 years old, and it formed after the last ice age. Soil is also a really valuable carbon store, capturing carbon, locking it away in stable forms deep underground. It stores 3 times as much carbon as all the plants on Earth combined, including trees. But because it grows so slowly, we need to protect what we have. We are not succeeding. We know many of the problems. Intensive farming is one of them. It releases carbon from our soils, and we're losing soil 50 to 100 times faster than it's able to rebuild. In Europe, 60 to 70% of soils are thought to be unhealthy. And in croplands in the UK, in less than 30 years from the end of the 1970s, we lost more than 10% of the carbon the soil had stored for us. And since then, well, we just don't know. Because in many countries there's little data on soil, it's poorly protected and regulated. We grow on it, build in it, build from it. It filters and cleans our waters, reduces flooding and regulates our atmosphere. It's one of the most biodiverse habitats on Earth and a vital part of the nitrogen and carbon cycle on our planet. But the sad truth is, right now, soil hasn't enough champions fighting for it. We literally treat it like dirt. And yet there is so much untapped potential, so much wonder, and so many secrets just waiting to be discovered in the ground beneath our feet.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, be sure to check out these videos next. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and click the bell to get a notification each time we upload a new video.
How does gender inequality manifest itself? In week 4, we heard from Pisna Chito on this topic. In Africa, where we work, amongst the examples of this kind of inequality can include gaining access to land. If women are provided with land, they often receive the poorer parcels on which to farm. Women are often denied access to farming inputs like seed, fertilizer, and farm advice. In many instances, women don't get the same opportunities to join a farming cooperative. They're frequently denied access to draft animals like oxen to plough their land and have to rely on hand hoes instead. They often grow lower value food crops, and their traditional role on the farm is often doing less economically rewarding work like drawing water, collecting firewood, and weeding the fields. It's estimated that if women farmers were to receive the same level of support as their male counterparts, food production would increase by a massive 20%. On this list, you'll find examples of the kinds of things that need to happen in order to close the gender gap in agriculture. Things like strengthening women's rights and elevating their voices. And as mentioned earlier, it's so important to ensure affordable, healthy diets for everyone. If this gap isn't closed, that won't be possible to achieve. Some of the reasons that it's important to achieve gender equality include the positive influence that it has on the wider economy and on society. You'll also see here listed the contrast in how women invest their earnings compared to how men invest them. And as it says, investments in women are investments in the community. Last week, in the 5th session of this course, we turned our attention to climate, and we were led by Edward Melke for this session. He outlined the areas of food production that actually can harm the environment, such as livestock and food waste. Climate justice affects many communities we work with in Africa, and indeed the continent of Africa is a hotspot for the impacts of climate change. Relating to climate justice, the unjust thing about this is that these communities hold very little responsibility for the effects that they're experiencing. Edward also spoke about the topic of climate smart agriculture, and you can see some examples of here on this slide. These are ways to lessen the impacts of that food production has on the environment. As well as methods of climate smart agriculture, we have many tree planting projects in Self-Help Africa. This is a really effective way to counter the emissions caused by food production. And don't forget, we're going to plant a tree for each of you who have participated in this course. From each of the sessions on this course, a key message that we have learned is that the food production systems we have in place at the moment need to change. This is necessary for the growing population and for our planet. So here you'll see some important next steps. And these range from things like international trade to our own individual habits. Before we go, we're going to share a video with even more food for thought. And it includes some other potential remedies and solutions. So we hope you enjoy this video.
Future Food, the menu of 2030. The world's population has been increasing faster than food production, even with modern agricultural technology. There will be 9 billion people to feed by 2050. Researchers have been looking at new food sources, tweaking existing ones, and even creating entirely new foods. We examine what could be on our dinner table 20 to 30 years from now. Critters. A 2013 UN Food and Agricultural Organization report reminds us that there are 1,900 edible insect species out there, that some 2 billion earthlings already regularly consume: beetles, butterflies, moths, bees, and locusts. Insects are abundantly available and rich in low-fat protein, fiber, and minerals. Lab meat. Scientists came up with synthetic meat grown in the lab. As early as 2013, scientists have already cultured ground beef from cow stem cells. Although that lab patty cost $330,000 to make and tasted quite bland, experts predict it will only take a decade or two for an affordable product that looks, cooks, smells, and tastes like ground beef. Algae. While it is already used as a biofuel, algae is seen as a solution for the problem of food shortages, as it can feed humans and animals alike. Algae is the fastest growing plant on Earth and has long been cultivated in Asia. Food experts predict algae farming could become the world's biggest crop industry, as it can be grown in both the oceans and in fresh water. It is a good source of vitamins and minerals. Farmed fish. 3.5 billion humans today depend on the oceans for their primary food source. That figure will double in 20 years. Fortunately, humans are aware of this and have implemented sustainable commercial fishing practices and turned to cultivating fish. Aquaculture is going big, with 35 countries producing more farmed fish than fish caught in the wild. A milestone was reached in 2011 when, for the first time, more fish were farmed than beef, a trend that has continued. GMO chow. Genetically modified food is nothing new. We first re-engineered the DNA of plants in the 80s to make them disease-resistant. By the 90s, GM foods were commercially available. Several food items we consume, fruits, crops, livestock, even fish, have undergone some sort of genetic modification. These are generally safe and went through strict standards. 3D printed dishes. Straight from the printer and onto the plate, you will be able to fully customize food shapes, textures, tastes, and forms. You can order online your favorite chocolate bar or snack and 3D print it with a machine at home. The food you're craving will just be a print away.
To conclude our final food for thought session, we're going to leave you with Irish Aid's key priorities for this area. And you'll see them on your screen there. And while this concludes the end of our food for thought course, we hope that your own journey will continue. A reminder that we'd be really grateful if you could take the time to complete our survey. Once you've done this, we'll send you a certificate to acknowledge your participation in our Food for Thought online course. And of course, we'll be planting a tree for you in Africa as well.